everybody, welcome back to Raven's Recaps, Inside the Matrix, Internal Monitoring. Before we go inside the Matrix, I want to acknowledge that I'm on a road trip and in Wetaskiwin, which is on Treaty 6 territory. Today's work and content was produced on Treaty 6 and Métis ancestral lands, the gathering place of many Indigenous people. This is where I will participate in the hard work of truth and reconciliation. This is a lot to unpack, so I hope you can stick it out. There are a few hard truths we all have to accept going into the Matrix. Some drivers falsify their time records. I know, you're as shocked as me. The data doesn't lie and the data doesn't go away. The data lives on the cloud for 6 months. If you go into this expecting perfection, you will be very disappointed. If a driver is 30 minutes from home or the truck stop and is out of hours, that driver will go home and either unplug or use personal conveyance. Who could blame them? I would do the exact same thing. Write as many discipline letters for the driver file as you want. It will still happen. This is why the driver, dispatch, and safety all need to work with each other in a holistic, non-punitive environment. In the ELD world, everyone has a role to play. The hours of service requires carriers to monitor driver compliance with the regulation and the technical standard. However, there is little guidance on how to monitor rods. Without an interpretation guide that includes ELDs, carriers are left with limited options, until I showed up. Let's take a look at the regulations and see what is required. 87 sub 1, a motor carrier shall monitor the compliance of each driver with these regulations. Okay, that's pretty simple. But remember, who is a driver? Anyone in the ELD with an active driver account is a driver. Keep your driver list up to date. You don't want to be responsible for a driver that quit last year and you didn't deactivate. Sub 2. A motor carrier that determines that there has been non-compliance with these regulations shall take immediate remedial action and record the dates on which the non-compliance occurred and the action taken. Okay, we are going to tackle this in two parts. Determine non-compliance and immediate remedial action. Hours of service data for a driver is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because the rods live in the cloud. Does that mean the carrier is responsible for watching the dashboard 24/7? No. The internal monitoring of the driver's daily limits and the internal ELD functionality compliance covers that. Because the ELD alerts the driver 30 minutes before a duty status limit is reached, any functional connectivity issues with the ELD alerts the driver immediately and makes the driver confirm that periods with no connection to the ELD may cause errors to the recording of time. In this context, determine would mean when dispatch or safety noticed the violation when it was reported in the dashboard or when the driver reported it and the violation is acknowledged. Here's the thing. Not everything on the dashboard or the display roadside is a violation or an issue. Some data malfunctions and unidentified time resolve after certain criteria is met within certain time frames. In this context, determine is meant for daily limit violations. Example, a driver failed to have 10 hours off in a day and is currently in an out-of-service condition. The remedial action would be to immediately stop the driver until sufficient time off was taken. In the ELD, the comments would be, driver was placed in an off-duty status when off-duty requirements were not met. This would be the remedial action you took and documented. The next part is record the dates on which the non-compliance occurred and the action taken. This is in the context of a monthly hours of service review. In a monthly review, the rods have been certified by the driver, monitored by the carrier, and found to be correct. In Raven's Rules, Internal Monitoring, I talk about cleaning up the driver accounts, doing software updates, and making sure the header page SFC information is correct, and I'm going to assume this is done. When monitoring a driver, there are two documents you can use. If you download the PDF version, the rods will look like a regular rods page. You will also get a CSV report. I use the CSV report because it's way faster, but most people will be using the PDF version. If you're monitoring a sample of rods at audit and you find a diagnostic event or a malfunction, don't bother reviewing the data. It's not reliable. A data diagnostic event is a record of non-compliance or data issues, and a malfunction refers to an ELD not functioning correctly. These rods would automatically have a fatigue violation. If you could prove the ELD was disconnected intentionally, that could be tampering, 86 sub 3. Now you have 30 days of rods with minimal data diagnostic events, and you're going to audit the rods and compare to known information. Print all the compliance reports for the driver. Do the reports make sense? Were there daily limit violations not addressed immediately? Are there edits or rods that need explanation? The auditor reviewing the rods does not work for you. The auditor doesn't know that the reason a driver went off duty in Winnipeg and then 4 days later showed up in a truck in Toronto with no driving time is because the driver flew to Toronto and then took a truck out from there. If you explain, then it makes sense. With no explanation, it looks like the driver took the magic space time portal again. Take the time and clean up your rods on the daily, especially if you think you might get an audit. Next, have Table 6 and Table 9 available for reference. Event record status. Anything with a 2, 3, or 4 needs review. Event record origin. Anything with a 2, 3, or 4 needs review. Accumulated vehicle distance. If there is no data, this needs additional review. Elapsed engine hours. If there is no data, this needs additional review. Event latitude and longitude. If there is no data or an M or an X, this needs additional review. Distance since last valid coordinates. If there is a 0, that is good. If there is data or a 9, that needs additional review. Malfunction indicator status. If there is any data, this needs additional review. Data diagnostic event indicator status for driver. If there is any data, this needs additional review. Event comment annotation. Only certain events require a comment. If there is a comment, it's good practice to review it. For example, if you notice a driver is logging off duty but writing a comment unloading or waiting at scale, this would be an incorrect duty status as per the comment. Driver location description. Remember, the ELD is supposed to be recording data automatically, and if a location description is required by the driver, it's because the ELD isn't getting the location information from the ECM. This needs additional review. Next, check the certification. 78.2. A driver shall, immediately after recording the last entry for a day, certify the accuracy of their record of duty status. In the old paper log days, certification was just a form and manner, but now it's an expensive violation, which usually means it's more serious. The way the ELD is supposed to work is that when a driver inputs the last entry of the day, the rods will be correct. Because the entire day, the ELD, dispatch, and safety were monitoring all the information required with minimal input from the driver. There should be no time violations because a daily limit violation would have alerted the driver and the driver should have stopped. A driver should be confident at the end of the day that all the information was correct and certify with confidence. Next, you're going to use comparative records with known information. There are many records you can use. If you are developing a monitoring program, give me a call. There is no one-size-fits-all. For my example, I'm going to use the DVIR and fuel. DVIR because even though DVIR lives within the ELD, the DVIR regulation is not in the hours of service. It has its own separate regulation. It is also not part of the technical standard, which means it is not a certified part of the ELD system. Not all information in the DVIR is populated by the ECM and requires driver input. Check that the ELD date, time, and location matches what the driver entered in the DVIR. If the DVIR was done at 10 a.m. in Dryden, but the driver was in sleeper berth in Thunder Bay, you have a problem. Same thing with fuel. Use the fuel statement and the Control F function to find the date and time in the rods and make sure the driver is logging the correct duty status. Keep doing that until you get to the end of the month. It's like money. You hope you get to the end of the month and still have some. In monitoring, you hope you get to the end of the month with no violations. Next, record the dates on which the non-compliance occurred and the action taken. The hours of service does not tell you what action to take. If you fire every driver that has crappy rods, you will have no drivers. You also cannot go month after month with the same report and nothing happens. At minimum, you have to follow the progressive discipline in your safety program. If you have no safety program, go back to the beginning and watch the first videos. When you document a violation in the monthly monitoring report, download and save the rods PDF and keep the rods with the compliance report for the driver in the driver file for 4 years. It can be in electronic format as long as you can produce it. Rods are only valid for 6 months, so stop keeping them. That's about it for Inside the Matrix internal monitoring. If you have questions or need some help, email me at info@therodsgod.ca. Thanks for watching. Bye.